What's happening in Gaza and the rest of Palestine goes beyond the past 3 days. Israeli propaganda wants to show that Israeli actions in the Gaza Strip yesterday and in the past few days have happened as a response to Palestinian militants launching a rocket. I think limiting the discourse to talking about this incident limits our ability to understand how violence unfolds not only in the Gaza Strip but in all of Palestine. The Palestinian people in Gaza and beyond are victims to years and years of legal and structural violence that have been inflicted on them. And this violence that Israel exercises, Palestinians experience on a daily basis. We see the manifestations of this violence affecting Palestinian lives in the Gaza Strip. For example, the decade-long blockade that rendered the Gaza Strip unlivable. People living in Gaza with 4 to 6 hours of electricity a day. More than 90% of Gaza's water has been undrinkable and unpolluted, and people don't have access to clean water. We're talking about a Gaza Strip that with 2.2 million people, the majority of whom have never had the chance to travel and see the outside world. But it goes beyond Gaza. In the West Bank, Israel builds more settlements and seizes Palestinian land, and Palestinians in the West Bank have been subject to Israeli violence. Inside Israel itself, Palestinian citizens of Israel are victims to laws like the nation-state law that diminished any hope for them to enjoy any kind of self-determination and made and affirmed that Israel is not a state for all of its citizens. Palestinians in the diaspora have been denied the right to return. So when we talk about violence, we're talking about decades and decades of violence that have been inflicted on Palestinians. And yes, in response to these years of violence, some Palestinians would resort to using some violent methods in response. But Israeli propaganda is trying to show that its actions are responses to some Palestinians resorting to violence, although it's their right to defend themselves according to international law and with accordance with international law. But again, it's important to remember that what's happening in the Gaza Strip is part of that larger context of violence that Israel practices against the Palestinians, and it's important for us to remember and remember that in our narrative and in our discourse, because if we don't do so in the next few days or weeks, if Israel launches another 2014-like operation, thousands of Palestinians will lose their lives and many will be rendered homeless and injured.